Before heading to the video, if you haven't subscribed the channel, do subscribe it and don't forget to click the bell icon for the latest update notification. If you like the video, do like, comment and share. Stay tuned with learnbay.co. Happy learning!
So the very first algorithm, and which I like to think which is the most simplest algorithm, is called k-means algorithm or k-means clustering algorithm. Okay, so mostly when we say the word clustering, although it basically refers to grouping or classification itself, but most people inherently have an understanding that clustering means grouping in an unsupervised unsupervised scenario. And no, I'm just telling it's a general idea. I'm not saying that everyone even agrees with it. And classification is grouping, usually in supervised. Okay. So mostly whenever we are saying with the word clustering, we are kind of referring that it must be an unsupervised idea. And whenever we are referring to classification, we refer like it is a supervised idea. Okay. This is like a general understanding that most ML practitioner or data scientists usually have, that they understand if you use these two words separately, and that's fine. Okay. So the very first algorithm is called k-means. Okay. Now the idea is, now again, this is also a distance based algorithm, and I will show you what is the use of distance here. Okay. So maybe I will use annotation once again. Okay guys, so right now we are taking care of Cartesian coordinates only, so it would be easier for us to work. So again, I will just take some similar looking points. They might or might not be in different clusters. Okay, all right. This is clear. This is the problem statement is clear, that basically we have to group or cluster them in separate clusters. Make sense? Now, how would you do it? So the idea is, the very first idea is called k-means. Okay, so let's look at how k-means or how the k-means algorithm works itself. Okay. So the idea is, basically we have to find cluster centers. So what we are pointing here at is that how can we get cluster centers? Now, basically we are playing with this idea that there exist means. Okay. Means will be taken as your center or cluster centers. And the idea is, if you determine and if you could figure out cluster centers correctly, we will be able to tell which group or which cluster they belong, or sorry, the rest of the points belong to which cluster, let's say. Um, Actually, although I will show you, the division is slightly different. Okay, it's not exactly like circular or something. Okay, but I will show you how the partitioning. What it is called Bernoulli partitioning. That basically happens. Okay, so this is not actually circular looking actually at all. All right, but still, first we have to understand how it works, right? Let me remove all this first. Okay, so let's generate some data and just to visualize things first of all. And we will leave labels out, so no coloring or anything. Okay, now we know how many centers there are, but again I will show you the problem that what can happen. And you can see the cluster standard deviation is actually pretty high, so you will see that it is highly segregated. There are total 500 points. Something close enough, although I will discuss KNN after this actually, so maybe this will become clear over there as well. Means I'm gonna discuss KNN, don't worry. Okay, so what does it looks like, guys? How many clusters? Means if you will not know, imagine if you were not to know that how it was created, how many clusters do you think? Sorry, what I'm doing here. How many points do you think we have here? Not sorry, points, my bad. How many clusters do we have here?
4.
4. Are you sure?
Yeah, because the left bottom one looks like it can be split. There is some overlap, but I can see 2 more groupings. But if you say at a slightly more airplane level, yeah, it is 3. Clearly, very well defined.
Yeah. Again, imagine this properly. That basically what we are saying is, if I were not have shown you the code and how many actual centers there are, a lot of people will be biased against 3. That they will think the left one, that your left bottom will be looking a lot of like, okay, it is just a big center or big cluster. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Now you could imagine 4, and there is a human biasness actually, that humans also get very biased when they look at clusters. Okay, so that's a more of a neuroscience topic actually. But even if we are not told, we start imagining things even if they are not there. So you might not imagine, but most people would imagine it as a Gaussian distribution. Even if you do not understand Gaussian, you will imagine it as a Gaussian distribution. Why? Just tell me why you will imagine it as a Gaussian. Means your mental image will be of Gaussian even if you don't understand Gaussian. Because in nature you have seen Gaussian so many times that it is a recurring theme if you think about it. Those are standard deviation circles, okay? Now it makes sense. Now I'm not saying that all data is actually Gaussian, okay? I'm just giving you that why your brain must have thought like that, because internally it likes to do something like this. It basically likes to conceptualize that around some center there is high density, and as you go away from the center, the density reduces. Do you guys agree? Even if you do not know, actually, that's the funny part. Your brain, you would not be able to explain why you do this. But people have seen that even you don't understand Gaussian, because you see it in nature so often, like distribution of leaves if there is no serious wind. Have you gone and seen like proper autumn or fall time? Means anyone has lived in such areas in their lives? Means have you seen a proper fall season actually? So anyone living in like almost any part in USA, they might have actually seen it. In India, it is very much visible in almost North India. In South India, most of the trees are like evergreen technically.
And North is called
These things happen, but these things means in South India, it will keep on happening almost all the year. Okay. But there are like in October, November, like it is going to approach now really soon. Those are called fall seasons in USA. And then from December, January, February, and even till March, April, it might be snowing over there. So what happens is in fall season, just before snow starts, the leaves start turning yellow, basically yellow, red, and they are very beautiful colors that they appear after a while. Okay, so what happens is, and you might have seen this or you might have seen it in movies that maybe you will not recognize right now, but what will happen is, if there is a base of tree or trunk of the tree, so imagine there is a trunk of tree, this is it. Okay, so of course there could be no leaves here, but then what will happen here is that if there is no wind, okay, and many times in fall there is no immediate wind, it will come afterwards. Actually, what we observe is a very good pattern of a Gaussian distribution itself. Even if we do not realize that the density will start to reduce as you go away from the tree. So imagine these are leaves basically, which I am trying to plot. And then there are even fewer leaves as we go along. Unless someone comes and collects them regularly, this is the shape they take usually. So if someone has observed the fall, next time when you will observe, which will be again very soon now, if someone has not touched the leaves or if there is no wind blowing, ideally around a tree, this is the structure that kind of comes. Around the base, the density is much higher, and as it spreads out in the radius, the density starts to reduce, and you can start imagining that apart from that main trunk of the tree, it starts to perform a Gaussian, or like in a 2D world, it is almost like a Gaussian shape. Okay, so the idea is, even if you don't think about it, but many times when we see things in nature, and if we see our own clustering mechanisms, or if we see our own clusterings, we see this pattern actually occurring, that in around some imaginary center, you do feel that there is a higher density, and as you go along, and that's how you many times perceive cluster, or you can perceive like uniform density or uniform distribution, but most people will perceive Gaussian, and they are technically biased towards that. Okay, now again, repeating it very, very clearly, it doesn't mean all the scatterings or all of these groupings are actually Gaussian, but that's again one of the base assumptions that we make, and whenever we see that distribution, we immediately think it as a cluster. Okay, and that is where the biasness comes. Okay, so basically k-means is a very simple algorithm. Now we can find this under sklearn cluster. Okay, so now remember guys, there are 100 close enough to, now I don't think so even a scikit-learn support that many clusterings. So scikit-learn barely will tell you like 9, I think total. Yeah, 9, and this is clustering performance evaluation anyways. 9 or 8 only. Okay, 8 only. So basically the idea is very simple with k-means is that basically we have to figure out the cluster centers. And okay, what is k-means first of all? So k is an integer basically, and this has to be provided by user itself. This integer would be provided by the user itself. So it's basically some number that we provide. So it is the number of means or number of center points we think or we approximate that these many people would be, or these many people, or sorry, these many clusters would be there. And we try to classify all the points in that many clusters itself. So if you generate five points or 5 centers, if you imagine there are 5 means, then all the points will be actually arranged in 5 means only. Okay, that is what's going to happen really. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Now this is of course not very perfect, and we will talk about few algorithms where this doesn't has to be followed. Clustering algorithms and everything. So there are density based algorithms where this is not required. Just give me one moment, guys. So the idea is very simple, that based on our choice, so see this n clusters, this is what the k is basically. You have to provide how many clusters there should be. Now this is not ideal, and after a while we cannot even stick with this idea. So what should we do here? So first let's try to understand how k-means work, and then we can of course look into some other algorithms where this problem might be solved a bit better. Okay, so basically we stick with sklearn.clusters, import k-means, and you just basically have to import fit again, the training will happen. So don't think so there is no training as such, there is training. Okay, and again same predict function. The only thing is you will there is no y directly to assign like a loss function or something. Okay, that is the only major difference. And now we see all the outcomes. If you see, this is nothing, k-means, y k-means is just the outcome predicted by the trained k-mean clustering algorithm. And you see it here that basically the values are from 0 to 3. Everyone sees that?
So, sir, each point on the array is a data row,
No, this
and
is the outcome. We are telling what label they are.
yeah, that's what I'm
This
saying.
is,
So each,
this is our prediction. Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
you
yes, go
got
ahead.
it. So each data, each row is evaluated, and basis that we say whether it is 3 or 0 or 1 or 2, and that is the
Yeah,
way.
exactly. You are right. You are right. Test data only, or whichever you have
Yeah, yeah,
separated.
that's the train, but okay.
Or if you want to say that no, or let's do it for all of the data, that is also fine. Although technically you should separate your data, means this is not a correct way of doing, because you can miss otherwise it's like a high overfitting, or you are like just ignoring the rules of machine learning. Basically the data should ideally be separated out, or unless you are doing cross validation internally.
Okay.
Again, that will separate out data anyways, but this is just to plot because I have not created separate test data yet. Okay, so if you were to run k-means and you can plot it, so through k-means we can get the cluster centers, we can print the cluster centers as well. So this is how they ideally look like. And do you think these are a good enough representation? Come on. Okay, but I can also point it out that basically it's just bogus. Basically it depends on how many clusters I choose. Okay, it is not some reality that we are living in. It's something that we are really creating at every moment, and now the values are going from 0 to 4 here if you look carefully. And if we ignore that right now, or we directly can go for cluster centers itself, or plotting of these centers, and now you will find 5 cluster centers and 5 groupings, which can equally look convincing. See the problem? So actually k-means, as I told you, is a very simple algorithm, and a lot of people actually are not even in favor of using this. So we will learn a couple of more algorithms in clustering itself, which are slightly better. Compared to k-means, they will definitely be more reliable, although they might have more time complexity. But this is one of the most simplest ways of doing things, when you can guess or someone can tell you that how many groups possibly there are. Okay, so then it can work very fine. It has its own problem, but still it can be like, even if I were to make n clusters is equal to 3, it has no problem. It will just say, okay, let's classify or group all the points in just 3 groupings and get it done. See, even in 3 it is not bad. Actually it looks very reasonable, but yeah, it could be very easily 3 as well. Make sense, guys? Like what is, yeah, what is it? It might be doing, but fundamentally there is a flaw, not flaw, like there is a very hard limitation here. So of course you cannot assume it as a like a very amazing algorithm or something like that. But you can see the problems right here. That basically it is just your choosing, right? You can choose the number of clusters and accordingly it will behave. Okay. So now we need to understand how this clustering idea basically works. Okay. And this is what is called Voronoi partitioning, and I will explain you how this works. Okay. And there are some scores that we also have to study about. Okay. So, okay, actually we will come to Voronoi partitioning once we have understood the clustering or K-means clustering minimum. So again, given the assumption that you know or somehow you can guess how many outcomes are optimal, what you do here is you can work with K-mean algorithm, which is expectation maximization, EM algorithm we call. The idea is expectation is like you guess something and you try to maximize the profit or maximize the some distance parameter or something that you take. Now, before I go to EM method, I have to talk to you about how do you calculate distance. So guys, there are two approaches. Usually first is referred as L1, which can be called Manhattan, and L2, which can be called as Euclidean. Okay. And you will see this when I will talk about regularization. You will again see L1 and L2 kind of getting repeated. Okay. All right, so we have Manhattan distance, we have Euclidean distance, L1 and L2. So does anyone knows how to calculate Manhattan and what is Manhattan distance and what is Euclidean distance first of all?
I don't know about Manhattan, but I think I have heard about
Euclidean, everyone
Euclidean.
knows. Yeah, because you have taken a coordinate geometry, so you must know Euclidean. So yeah, tell
Yes,
me what is
right.
Euclidean?
Basically, for example, the points are in the two dimension, then the
Yeah.
x2 minus x1 square, then y2 minus y1 square, and the
Right, you're right. So if there are 2 points and if somehow you can visualize them, so this is A and B. And if you have to find the shortest distance, which is a straight line, this is C, this small a, and this is small b, and this is maybe origin. So how the value of C is found out, if I may ask? Come on, what is the value of C? This is 90 degree.
a square plus b square.
Good. Under root, of course. Okay. This is Euclidean. Everyone knows this. As many dimensions you put over there, I don't think so anyone has any problem here, right? Some people might not know Manhattan. That is called a L1 distance. So Manhattan is very simple actually. Or maybe I should write delta A and delta B actually. It means change in A and B, but that's fine. Manhattan is actually very simple. If you want to get C, it is nothing but or you can put yeah, this is the correct approach. That's all what Manhattan is. Now the problem is visualization, right? So because it is called Manhattan, why don't we look at the map of Manhattan? So you understand when I say Manhattan what I'm referring to, right? Basically it's an island technically, so I can open it in Google Maps and that would be easy to sell, I guess. So if anyone has went to Manhattan, they will understand it immediately. If you live over there, great. Even if you have traveled, you will understand what the point I'm trying to make here. Okay. So for that, we will have to see how the roads and the structure of Manhattan really is. It's a grid structure if you look very, very carefully. Okay, so there is a rule and I will explain you how to, if you want to travel in Manhattan, you need to understand how things work over there, how streets and avenues are named. Okay. All right, so you can see, so going from south to north are avenues actually. And this is actually followed in a lot of US cities. Okay. So going from south to north, it is avenue. Like even in people living in Bangalore, might understand the idea of main and cross, right? You understand how main and cross works?
Yeah.
Yeah. So something similar is followed over there as well. It is, so north to south mostly is avenue, and from east to west it is street, like 16th street, okay, or 17th street, 14th street, okay. So okay, and the numbering starts from south to north, the street number starts to increase. So if you go the most downwards here, around somewhere here, 3rd Street, Bleecker Street, yeah, somewhere here, after a while there are all the names like Wall Street and stuff. So yeah, I think Canal Street. So beyond that, actually somewhere here it all from Houston. Yeah, somewhere here from Houston is almost considered the first street, Bleecker is the second, third, and so forth. Okay, now the numbering will really start, and you will see that there are regular numbers now, like 9th Street, 10th Street. Okay, so this is very this is the idea that this is how it starts. And now similarly from this side, east to west, the avenue numbers really start. So this is your first avenue. Actually, you can see First Avenue, Second Avenue, Third Avenue, and of course some has been renamed as something else like Fourth Avenue. Okay, and it keeps going. Especially I should go near Park. Okay, I'm whenever someone says like Park, they mostly refer to Central Park. So basically here it is very consistent. Here you can see the consistency is really good. Everything is in a proper grid way. Okay, so basically when I went with my friends, actually I've been like over there like 3-4 times, actually 3 times. So the idea is, if you were to take a taxi, how would you take a taxi? That is a question over there. Okay. So basically, if you have to call a taxi, like let's say on a phone or something, if there is not an available taxi, what he told me was the structure that the standing that everyone is. First, you will mention the street. So you will say, I am at 43rd and 9th. So you say 43rd and 9th. So there is only one possibility where you could be. See? Right. There could be just one possibility, or this small area of intersection there where you could be. So this is how you tell the address. Let's say you call the taxi, maybe you call the taxi here. You say 41st and 9th. So the taxi guy will come here right away. And you say, I have to go to 46th and 8th, something like this. Okay. Now, can you tell me, if you were to imagine square grids rather than rectangular grids, how would you calculate the distance? Come on, anyone?
You do the final avenue minus the initial avenue plus the final street minus the initial street.
Good, very good. That's a very smart way of doing things. Although here the distance would be still tricky because in the width side it is a bit more, but you got the idea. This is called Manhattan distance. That means this is how you travel in Manhattan basically. This is the actual distance that will work in your favor mostly. Because you, unless you are not on foot, vehicles cannot pass like this. Maybe if you are on foot, there might be back alleys and stuff, and it still will not be this straight. So this is Euclidean distance, and this combined, let's say this is mod A or mod delta A plus mod delta, because for the change I'm writing. Okay, so Manhattan distance is mod A plus mod B, or mod delta A plus mod delta B. Makes sense? Because it's a distance, so you cannot really go negative here. Is it clear what is Euclidean and what is Manhattan distance?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This will come. This will be. This actually is a good question for a lot of interviews as well. That how or which algorithm or which distance measuring you choose, and accordingly how do you proceed. Now right now our example will be based on Euclidean itself, but a lot of time clustering mechanisms are fundamentally using Manhattan, and you should know about at least both of them. Okay, all right. So the idea is very simple, guys, and maybe this picture will kind of give you a basic faint idea. Okay, so it means is you start with random initializations. Okay, you just randomly initialize 4 clusters or as many clusters you have provided. Okay, now what you do is you calculate distance from all of them, and whichever points have shortest distance or whichever have like shortest distance, those are assigned to one group, and similarly there would be like close to 4 groups. Okay, now what you do is you recalculate the mean based on the new points now. Okay, so the mean is shifted now, and again you do the same calculation. Again you try to calculate the points usually which have shorter distance. Again you do the shifting, so it will happen, and after a while you will see that the shifting of the means has almost stopped practically. So you can put some tolerance value, and you can see that the shifting has completely stopped and it has converged, and it will come up with 4 of these clusters. So let me show you physically that how it will work. Basically, we can go step by step. Actually, sorry, why I'm jumping here. Okay, so let me explain how this idea works. So if I were to take clustering, maybe I should draw it properly first. Okay, all right. So the idea is very simple, that basically what do we say here is that let's start with 4 cluster centers, right? So randomly I will choose on this map or this place, randomly we will choose 4 cluster centers. Now this is because this is random initialization, it can vary for everyone. Okay. Now do basic distance calculation. Now this is Euclidean. Okay, you can just do Euclidean distance calculation, and you figure out based on some distance metric how many points or which many number of points are close enough to you. So let's say you say that these points, and again let's say it works out very well that in this scenario these many points kind of belong to this first point or first group, second and third, right? So basically if you choose the next these many points as second group, so what you do is you, now this point is actually not a actual point. Okay, this is some random initialization. So what you do is you take all of this distance parameter and you average it out, right? I guess you understand how to take the mean anyway. And let's say you average all the distances out from this current cluster, and based on the averaging out you might find the new cluster is somewhere here. Okay, so maybe you can delete some of this stuff and you will find this, that the new cluster is somewhere there. Just assumption, I'm not saying this is how it will look exactly, but yeah, something like this. So you might find the new cluster center is here. Similarly here you will find, let's say the cluster center is here. It might not be perfect, but close enough. And maybe cluster center is here. Now you do the same thing. You run it few times till there is almost no shift in the cluster center, and you saturate or you kind of figure it out or you converge on a state where the cluster centers are not changing anymore. Okay, this is called K-means algorithm. Very simple, very intuitive actually, but this is what K-means algorithm is all about. So again, I have given the steps actually here, and let me explain you the steps. The basic steps are very simple. Sorry, I think there was an equation here. Okay, all right, no problem. So X are the number of points and V are the centers. So basically you have to provide the overall number of centers. Now you will randomly have to select C centers. So you choose like 4, 5, whatever number of centers do you think is good enough. Now calculate distance between each data point and cluster centers. Okay, so for each cluster center, you will have to calculate data points. Now assign data points to cluster center whose distance from the cluster center is the minimum of cluster centers. And you will basically have to recalculate the distance of the center using a formula which is not visible here. But I will give you that formula anyways, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so what is the first step, guys? Again, let's go step by step.
Random initialization.
Good, very good. First step is random initialization of C centers, which you have provided anyway. Okay, so this is then the second part is you kind of get pairwise distance calculation. Okay, right now I am definitely talking about Euclidean itself. Okay, and then what you get is you try to assign each point. Okay, so what will happen is after doing this, basically for each point, let's say, or each cluster, let's say C1, we will have distance from all the points. So let's say we have 500 points. So C3, you will have 500 distance in C1, 500 distance in C2, 500 distance in C3. Let's imagine there are only 3 centers. Okay, make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, now idea is which point, let's say point number 1. So assign points to clusters based which distance is minimum basically. So let's say point 1. Let's start with point 1. So which cluster it will go for? Tell me. Just example wise. You don't have to really actually take the values or something.
So I read what you had written there. So basically,
Yeah, it will find the point 1, whichever distance is minimum with all, because it has pairwise distance for all clusters, right? So it will try to find, let's say this is point 1, distance is 0.9 here. This distance is 1.1 and this distance is 0.56. So which cluster it should be assigned to right now?
C3.
C3, very good. And similarly, let's say if there are 500 points, you will try to assign each of them with these, let's say 3 clusters only, because let's say you have taken K as 3 itself. Okay. Make sense? Now you have your set of, so this is step 3 till step 3. Now you have set of points which each cluster. So C1 has its own, let's say 160 points. C2 has, let's say 280 points. Okay, and C3 has remaining of the number of the points. So that will be 380 plus so 440. Okay. So not that many points, I guess 60. Okay. Okay, all right. So this is number of points. So what you do here is, so again, so what is the fifth step here? These are the number of points, okay? Points that got assigned to each cluster initially because of your random initialization. Okay, so what is the fifth step, if I may ask? What do you do?
Recalculate the means.
Yes, recalculate the mean. Okay, so basically you take all the pairwise distance and by number of points, that many number of points you have, and whatever the distance is coming here. Now remember, it's a Euclidean distance still. Okay, so you will recalculate the mean at the end of the day. So 1 by s, or basically you can take this form in 1 by n itself as well. So 1 by s and divided by should be basically summation of xj basically, or whatever the yeah, summation of xj is fine, totally no problem. So number of s is basically number of points. So what will happen when I will perform this update? Let's call it xi. Okay. So what will happen when I will do the recalculation of mean?
It will give me the center point for that Gaussian.
And yeah, not, it will basically update. Yeah, you do not know right now even it is correct or not, right? So that is where you could get stuck. So basically what just happened is this movement thing just happened. Okay. First you assigned the points to either of the 4 points. Then you recalculated. What it means is this M step, maximization step, is what we have just done. It is gonna go in the center or in the middle of, or in that middle of the cluster that we have thought. Now there is no guarantee it is correct. Again, once the center has been shifted, again the recalculation will happen, or you will try to calculate the pairwise distance and you will try to assign them to one cluster. Again it will go in other direction. You will try to move a bit. Same, you will keep doing it a step till after a while you see it is not moving at all. Okay, or it has reached a conversion state where the change is almost negligible, and then you get the final clusterings. Is this clear?
One question, sir.
Yeah.
The question is, I understood that part when the first part of choosing a random initialization happened, and then we did the difference and found the nearest points, and basis that we knew that these are roughly the 4 clusters. Then we took the mean and moved the point to that mean, so that from that's where we are going to start now. Now what are we doing? We are again taking from that center, which is the redefined center, and a distance with each. Let's say 160 we got in, let's say the 61 which we got in the end.
No, so this time number of points will again change, because the moment it will start the recalculation and try to get the minimum distance points only, or each points will be only assigned to the cluster point, which is from minimum distance from it.
So it doesn't.
All the points will be again reassigned, or a lot of points will be basically reassigned to different center.
Okay. So the question was, it is not doing for, now it is not doing breaking into 4 groups. It's again recalculating for everything for each center point.
So now again, but you have defined the number of center points well.
Yeah, I got a point. Center point we defined, but the first step was to calculate a distance for each center.
That is the pain point. Yeah, that is where this algorithm, I will not call it slow, but that is, I think, the slowest aspect of this algorithm, because again, all the pairwise calculation Euclidean that happens, that is the problem. Okay, so what the algorithm does is sometimes it pre-computes the distances, but yeah, it has to compute all the 500 distances once again when the center shifts.
For each center, it will do 500 times again, net.
Yeah, you can say that, because all the 500 points have to be chosen. Again, the points have to be decided, and accordingly, again, the centers have to be shifted.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Make sense? So actually in Wikipedia, I think there is a ZIF actually which can explain you this idea very, very well. So let me just see if I can find k-means on Wikipedia. So this is, yeah, this is the GIF I wanted to show you. Okay, this is how it will basically start, guys. See, there are 3 centers. If you look very carefully, there is a plus or a cross sign for each of them. And this is how it is moving, and after a while it stabilizes basically. You will see now the movements are becoming smaller every time. Make sense?
Yeah.
And there might be another one. So basically these are the steps actually, maybe if I can show you. So these are 3 imagined clusters. So these are 3 random clusters, and rest of the point. Again, the clusters you are showing might not be actual points, first of all. And what happens? So first you will calculate, you will get your own area. I will explain how Voronoi partitioning works basically. It is very easy. Okay. So first, based on these 3 points or 3 understandings, we will get our Voronoi partitioning, and the points will be assigned to their own clusters. Now, what will happen is a new mean will be computed in all cases, in all areas, and the center will actually move a bit. So it will show you that centers are basically moving from their current position to a newer position. Everyone can see that? Good. And then again, the area is partitioned. And at some point when the partitioning or the movement completely stops, then that's where the algorithm converges and that's where you stop. Again, remember these circular or centers are not actual points. They are just representational. The square blocks or almost like square blocks are the actual points. Okay, so basically the idea is if a new point comes, which again, the question remains same, right? Basically the question is if a new point falls here, then which group it belongs to now?
We again take the distance from these and nearest, the lowest one.
Nearest one, basic, yeah, you are right. It's just the nearest one, whichever the ordinary partitioning works. In that group you fall. And if you wanted to see the rule of ordinary partitioning, let me remove this. So the mathematical rule is, I think, somewhere here. Yeah, this is the assignment step. Okay, that basically you compare all the distances. Let's say if there are two pairs, and it is only assigned to one which is less than equal to the previous one. Okay. Okay, so maybe you are seeing anyone is getting this Voronoi partitioning idea that this triangular, like many people think it is circular basically, but why it is going in this triangular fashion basically? Why the area separation looks triangular? No, but Sweta, why can't you imagine them in terms of circles? Why to imagine them like this? Because again, the fundamental assumption is they are Gaussian. So with Gaussian, what is the problem? Or not problem, like one of the property of Gaussian is that it goes from negative infinity to positive infinity in all directions. Sorry. So what will happen is basically what it assumes is, again, I will have to draw these points. Oh, come on. Okay. Again, you take these centers and this time I will draw some centers already. So imagine there are three centers only. We were insightful enough to see this point. So there are three centers right now. They are perfect or not, that's not our discussion. Okay. Now the problem is the Gaussian distance will go till infinity. So if I were to take a distance from here, center, it can go till infinity, right? Now where we need to counter it, can you tell me? Technically, imagine this would be an infinite circle basically, or it's a very large circle, but it needs to be stopped somewhere. So where would I be able to stop it?
Maybe 3 sigma.
Not 3 sigma, no. Where the other influence becomes more powerful. It is like the gravitational middle point. You know, there are gravitational kind of middle points between various planetary objects where both of them basically start to cancel each other out. Like between moon and earth, there is a gravitational middle actually. Okay, so you imagine, and now, okay, take two threads, okay, from two centers and draw a pencil in between of them. Okay, now the problem is, so how this will look like is, and this is the whole tricky part. So it will look like it because again, they can go till infinity, right? So at some equidistance point, and maybe I can draw that line. Maybe let me change the, let's say this is what the equidistance will look like till infinity. But at some point it will be counteracted by the third one. Because this is also in play, right? So this will stop them and it will say, no, you're not allowed in this area now because this area belongs to us. So there would be a conflict between this and this one now. So again, let's start this one with green itself and say it will try to go till infinity here, which it can't. So it will be restricted somewhere here, let's say, and go with this color. Okay. And again, till infinity, they will try to draw it. But at some point, you will realize that you can only manage to extend it till some point, because here it will basically get cut. And similarly, something like this will happen. So basically, moving some of the lines altogether. Okay, so what will happen here is, guys, that let me remove this. Basically, something like this will start to happen based on your distance calculation. Because again, Gaussian can extend till infinity, so it doesn't really matter. So we take, okay. Now this is how your whole partitioning has been done, and this partitioning style is called Voronoi partitioning. So it is not actually circular, because both the threads can technically take infinite distances. This is called a Voronoi partitioning.
So the center point then is the place where it is equidistant from all the 3 points.
You can say that, yeah.
Okay. And the x and y axis will be, let's say, different feature values.
Yeah, these are just features. Yeah, you are right.
Different feature values. So scaling will not come into picture because
no. Scaling will come to in picture. That's the biggest problem. If you do not scale well, the algorithm is not going to work very well actually.
okay.
Ideally, you should scale them properly in a similar scale. Otherwise, it could be disaster after a while.
Okay.
Okay, it can even get affected by outliers because the k-mean, right? So it can actually get affected by outliers itself.
So, so kind of if we were to visualize this thing, so we can kind of make here 3 Gaussians in the third plane, third dimension, right? And make a resultant plane of this, and then the valleys where valleys are the ones these lines are drawn, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah, it is the outer periphery. You can understand like outer periphery, but imagine the thread, like imagine. So what happens? Okay, take a nail somewhere, and let's say if this is the nail here, and if you have a finite length of thread, so what usually happens?
We get a circle.
Very good. You basically get a circle or oval, something like that. If the okay, if you put like two nails, and you can actually achieve an oval as well. Okay. So if there are two nails, you can actually, yeah, one should be circle itself. My bad, actually, I did not draw it correctly. Maybe I will remove it and again try to.
Yes, so like what you're saying is getting an ellipse in place.
Yeah, you are right. You're right. Okay. Actually, I can't move it, so maybe I'll do it other way around. I will just draw this later. Okay, so somewhere here, I imagine there is a center. Okay. If you were to take two nails, what will happen? And if there is a finite length of the thread, and if there is a pencil in between them, what happens?
It will be ellipse.
Yeah, it will be elliptical. You are right. So I'm not gonna go, maybe not a good one actually. Sorry. Okay, fine. You can just imagine it right now. Okay. Yeah, so you can come up with the ellipse over there.
Okay. Got that.
All right. So maybe you will get an ellipse over there. And, all right. So the idea is, what if they have infinite length then?
So come again. What has infinite
If
length?
the thread has infinite length, basically it can be, you have to maintain the middle point between two centers, and the thread has infinite length. Then
There will be kind of concentric ellipses.
sorry, what? Concentric
And
ellipse? No. You are not. I'm talking about the middle point. Okay. Think about it. So the problem is, people can say that, okay, if you are taking two middle points, let me remove all of this for a while now. Okay. So if you are taking two middle points, what can happen is, let's take two middle points or two centers. Okay. Okay. So ideally, what will happen, because again, Gaussians can extend to infinity. So ideally what happens is, you will come up with this idea of two circles. Basically, you will say, okay, fine. Sorry, what I'm trying. And you will come up with this idea of what the initial picture that I actually made at the very start. You will come up with this idea that basically it will be two circles, right? And here they are touching. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, but this can only happen if the thread length is finite. What if they were infinite length of threads? Then what will happen?
Okay, so they will merge into one another after all.
Not. Again, they have to maintain this middle part. The point can go either in this direction or other direction. So if you have infinite thread, what will happen? Imagine the middle point is somewhere here and you have infinite thread, then what will happen? Basically, you will get a line, guys. Like, what is the big issue? If they have to maintain the equal distance and if you have an infinite thread, you will get a line actually at the end of the day. If you have to maintain the middle point problem.
Okay,
Is that the-
given the condition, given the condition.
That's what I'm saying, but because whenever I say that basically it is like a middle point, then everyone imagines a finite thread and they imagine a circle. But this is what I'm trying to show. Actually, in clustering, we do not tend to get a circle, we tend to get a Voronoi partitioning. And there's a good reason why we get that. So even if there is another point, again, let me put that in contention as well. If there's another point, then again, you are trying to get a middle between these two. So maybe this will go like, one sec, let me change the color. Maybe again, it will go to infinity, but at some point it has to be cut down. But technically, even this middle distance will go till infinity. Now, similarly, there would be a middle distance between these and these 2 points that will go till infinity once again. So somewhere from here. So now this is the whole problem, that how do you divide it? So any line, whenever it interacts with any line, that becomes a boundary. You should not take it forward than that. Okay. So maybe right now what I will do here is I will delete a few things again. And I will say, even if you have a green line, it cannot cross over, this middle cannot possibly cross over this one. Okay. And similarly, this pink also has to be stopped somewhere. So maybe yellow has already stopped. Maybe pink will go till here, or maybe it can go a bit more. Not more actually, it should be stopped right there. So yeah, you can basically find, actually it is not a very perfect diagram. Actually the yellow will also come somewhere nearby, but fine. You can start to imagine that at some point what will happen is, maybe I can delete the pink for a while. And again, I can draw this pink line. Again, maintaining the middle only till here. Imagine, okay, although it will actually go farther. Maybe it can go much farther than anything. Okay. So this is the basic idea that, and this yellow will actually ideally should come here. Let's delete this. And let's say somewhere in this middle section, it will come like this. Okay. So you can start to imagine that maybe pink line can be restricted till here itself. And accordingly, you get a very good Voronoi partitioning of the space done by 3 cluster centers. Make sense?
Yeah, good.
All right. So this is why people tend to imagine, because for Gaussian, you tend to imagine your ellipse and circles. Imagine Gaussian is going to go till infinity and you have to choose the minimal. So you will basically get middle points between all these clusters, various cluster pairs, and you will have to design them such. So actually, if I were to show you Voronoi partitioning, good examples or something like that. So this is only for like 3 points, right? So you can see like Voronoi partitioning. And these basically, they are not actually triangles, they are basically unsided polygons actually. So they look very beautiful once you visualize them properly. But this is how it will become once you have a lot of centers. So people actually do get confused. They always think these things as circular or ellipses, but actually this is how your space gets separated, especially in terms of clustering.
So then going by this logic, all these dots basically, if I see, are the clusters, number of clusters.
That's the centers.
And this is for 2 features. Now, if I take 3 features, then this will be cones.
Yeah, of course, then it's slightly hard to visualize, but maybe you can start to visualize them in the first one, that basically they can go in much higher spaces. So it is slightly hard to imagine, but in two
So,
spaces,
yeah, so 3D would be something like a cone following the same logic of infinity.
exactly, it will become conical. Again, remember, it will not be ellipse or something. It will be conical at the end of the day. And basically, these are good representations of Warnay particles. So earlier, I used to think, long back, like 5-6 years ago, when I started reading about all this, that whenever we do clustering, it must be circular or elliptical. At that time, I didn't had a good grasp of Gaussian. So one day, my professor told me later that it will be some kind of a polygon shape, which will be determined how many sides it is trying to bifurcate or trying to manage. And this is what he told. These lines, once they are figured, they will go till infinity. Okay. And this is why the partitioning is not circular. Because if you put the lines as the length of thread as limited, then it will come up with a circular idea. But if you let these lines go as long till some other line cuts it, there will be straight Voronoi partitioning that is going to happen. And this is basically what will happen if you can also try to imagine this Delaunay triangulation in a 3D. This is how your 3D partitionings will start to look like.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Right. This is 3D partitioning in 2D, but if we,
Of course, the visualization is in 2D, but the idea is if
yeah,
somehow you could be seeing it in 3D, it will look like a Delaunay triangulation itself.
because I was mentally animating it in 3D, then it will be cones which are coming from each
No,
point.
it is. It is. If you observe very carefully, if you could blow it out in 3D, look
Yeah.
at Delaunay triangulation very carefully. If you could blow it out in 3D, you will be residing under various cones and various planes of triangles actually. Imagine this is a crystal. This is a crystal, and it is internally also connected with so many center points. So when you will be going inside this, you will find a lot of triangles, but basically because you will be inside that space, otherwise it will start to look like various shapes of cones and polygons in 3D.
Got it. Got it.
Got it? All right. If you have any doubt about Voronoi partitioning, okay, so let me show you what you were imagining basically. This is what you were doing, and this is correct. But basically that is just Delaunay triangulation itself.
Yeah.
Some people have drawn these kinds of triangulations, and this is how it will start to look like in 3D as well. Make sense? So after a while in 3D, it can actually get very dense, so it is not very easy for us to visualize. Maybe this picture is a very small picture. Okay, no problem. I think I have given good enough representation idea of Voronoi partitioning, and it should not confuse you as while going forward. Clear? And similarly, if you could imagine the world as well as your centers. So if you have different centers in the world, same, your overall world can also be imagined. And again, given like the lines can go anywhere, this is how your world can also start to look like.
So what are the on what basis is this partitioning done? For example,
I
not
think
popular.
there are some tier cities or something that
Okay.
where they're available, and maybe through density as well. So you can see a lot of first tier cities are in Europe, right? Very close to each other. In India, there are only 5-6 first tier cities. In USA, the first tier cities are always mostly around coast, and maybe I think one is Denver, maybe one might be Vegas or something. So, and if you treat them as centers, and then you try to define an area, you can see how densely the Voronoi partitioning is packed around Europe and a few parts of Southeast Asia. But otherwise, there are massive gaps actually. And again, you can see these lines are technically being taken throughout the globe. It's a good idea. It's not bad actually if you really think about these things. So is it clear with K-means clustering algorithm? That what did we mean and how does it works and what might be happening internally? And this is again same idea. The centroids or the centers are marked with white crosses here. Very good. Okay. Now remember, there are few pain points with K-means. It is like exceptionally simple algorithm. Any hard problem doesn't work very well. Okay, first it is fast, robust, and easier to understand. Totally agree. You see k-means partitioning, it is very clear what must have happened. You don't have too many confusions here. It's relatively efficient. It is almost linear if you think about it, where n is the number of objects, k is the number of clusters. So k is a small value anyways. So k into n is the answer anyways. D is the dimension of each object, t is the number of iterations. So ideally ktd is much less than n. So mostly it's order of n if we really think about it. And but it gives the results when they are best separated from each other or well separated from each other. Okay. Now the biggest problem is it requires pre-specification. What I'm trying to say is we need to know uh, how many cluster centers are there, and that is the problem, right? If I already knew, or if there was some kind of assumption that we have the output y somewhere, it would have been easier. Even if not y, someone would, if someone could tell us that how many cluster centers we are even dealing with, that would always be easier, wouldn't it? But that's not how life works actually. Cluster centers are many times not pre-specified. Okay. If you have too many overlapping points, then also it is not going to work very well. If you have it is not like invariant to nonlinear transformation. So usually it will be able to do linear separation very well, because again you can see the separation is mostly straight line through Voronoi partitioning. So through Voronoi partitioning, basically we are not available. Sorry, what I'm trying to say. So you can see the lines or the separation, the way we treat at the end of the day is very much straight line. So any kind of non-linear separation will not work very well for us. Now, problem with Euclidean distances, sometimes it can measure the weights of underlying factors unequally, and specifically if they are unscaled, then Euclidean could be a big problem. Okay, because one dimension can affect the overall results more than the other dimension. Okay, if you have not scaled them properly, Euclideans, anytime, whenever you take a distance parameter, scaling is very important. Okay, there is no guarantee of convergence, first of all. Okay, so what I will show you what k-means actually does. It runs like a lot of algorithms, a lot of iterations internally, and hopefully the best, whichever centers are regularly chosen, that those are chosen. Those are shown to you as the final centers. But ideally, there is no guarantee even here that, how do I say? There's no guarantee actually that it will be basically shown or it even will converge properly. Remember, it will only work when the mean is defined. So remember, it will not work for categorical data. If you have outliers or noisy data, you can kiss this algorithm goodbye, because it is not going to work. And remember, anything non-linear is also not going to work here. So as I just told you, like it is a very basic algorithm. It's not even like very intelligent or like there is something very fancy happening here. It's a very basic algorithm that we basically make it work. And let me show you what k-means is all about. And sorry, so maybe I can go directly into implementation. Okay. So now, basically there are certain features that you have to mostly worry. Most of the iterations and everything is very well defined. So n clusters is integer. By default, it is 8. Now it depends like how many you want to take. Okay, now by default it is k-mean plus plus, and it's okay. Basically it is a faster way. So I don't tell people to go for anything else. So you select initial cluster center for k-mean clustering in a smart way to speed up convergence. Okay. And then you have an init. So by default, the number of times k-mean algorithm will be run with different centroid seeds. So 10 times just to run it properly and just to make sure that you do not fail because one random initialization was not working. It will actually do it 10 times. That is default. You can actually change it. Okay. So the final result will be the best output of an init consecutive runs in terms of inertia. Okay, and then you have max iterations. So it will try to converge till 300 iterations for a single run. Okay, and there is a tolerance value. Okay, and with if the value of change is less than 10 to the power minus 4, it will stop. Okay, so it can stop before 300 iterations itself. Pre-compute distance, even I was like very susceptible to it, and thankfully now they have removed it. So from version 0.23, pre-compute distance really doesn't matters, and it has literally no effect. Like we knew this from long time. I don't know why did they keep it here so long. It was bound to remove it actually. Okay, all right. Now what you will get is cluster centers, labels, inertia is nothing, square distance, okay? And number of total iterations run that internally it has to take. Okay, so last iterations, or how many iterations till it took to do the convergence, okay? All right, and okay, this is like the average complexity, k into n into t, where n is the number of samples, t is the number of iterations, and k and t are really small anyway, so mostly it is linear, but the worst case complexity could be at this level, okay? And where you can see it is gonna be close enough to squared, close enough, okay? But remember, on an average in a practice, it is really fast. The only problem is there is no guarantee of finding a local minima. The convergence is really not guaranteed. So technically it runs it internally 10 times. So hopefully in few of them, it does find some convergence, and rest of the things are as it is basically. Okay, all right. Okay, so before I jump to the next algorithm, there is something called k nearest neighbor that I want to discuss in a in a small time and move forward. So now problem is KNN is supervised, unfortunately. Okay, but the idea is it is so remarkably similar that we had to actually, okay, first of all, there is no learning here. Okay, it's a very dead straightforward algorithm, what it will do, but there is no learning here. Okay, so basically the idea is you will give supervised data. So again, let me draw this. And because it's a supervised, so we definitely know the classes already, and maybe take the third class as well. Okay, the question is very simple and it works incredibly beautiful. Okay, so if this is the test data point, the question is really simple, which class it belongs to. Okay, it's a simple classification, so KNN is meant for classification itself, but because in k means people understand the idea of nearest neighbor, so it is called k nearest neighbors. Literally its name says it all. There is nothing else to tell or talk about even. A simple idea is k is some kind of integer that we provide. Ideally, it's usually a prime number, so it is not easily divisible. Okay, so what does it mean, guys? If in a most simplest way, if I were to ask you, how would you know which this point belongs to which class, either or which three of these classes?
Depending on the which class it is near to.
No. So basically, no. First, you will have to come to know what is your k that you will have to select. And now you will do a pairwise distance calculation. Okay. So whichever 5 nearest points are there, let's say, imagine 5 nearest points happen to be, you will see the majority of these nearest points or nearest neighbors are from which class. Okay. And that, imagine, that point will be assigned to this class itself. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Very simple, actually. There's nothing much to teach here, unfortunately. This is why I want to take this KNN as simply as possible. Again, it will try to compute distance with all the points, of course, but it will choose, let's say, 5 nearest points only. And even in those 5 nearest points, it will try to see which class is more dominant, and whichever class or whichever is more dominant, max of those will be simply chosen as your output.
Sir, and these clustering is not clustering, this is classification because target is already
Yeah,
defined.
it's a
So
pure means again, I'm trying to tell you, there is no learning here actually. This should not be even considered machine learning algorithm. It's a dead straight algorithm. It simply says you calculate the distance and you choose the k. That is the
okay.
only user input that usually matters is k. You choose the value of k, and whichever 5 or whatever the k value is, nearest neighbors that you might have, just tell me whichever is the maximum class or whichever class has the highest frequency. If two classes or multiple classes have similar level of frequency, it will do a random walk basically. Means it will choose one of those randomly internally, but otherwise it will choose the max of them.
So what is the kind of training over here? So basically we
No
are kind of
training. I'm just
taking.
telling you, there is no training. There is no training. It's not a learning algorithm. It is dead straight. But
They're
unfortunately,
basically.
it's in machine learning, so we have to teach you. Otherwise, I don't even consider this a machine learning algorithm. It's a dead straight rule that what you have to do here.
We are directly basically predicting.
I'm just saying because someday, once after learning clustering, some people come to this natural conclusion that maybe you could, if you know the labels, you could also have done this. I agree with this. But again, understand there is no learning happening really. But yeah, especially around clustering, people start to get the sense that something much simpler could also happen if the data is already given. So just to ensure that there is already an algorithm and it is called a k nearest neighbor. So I don't really have a slide for this to be very honest, but just to tell you. So KNN Skillon, right? So I don't really have a slide here for this idea, but just to show you what you have to do. And again, by default, the default number is 5, and you can choose it according to you. Ideally, choose a prime number, which is not easily divisible. Okay, otherwise, this equal term will happen. Now, the only thing it does intelligently is, again, that's a computer science concept. It will arrange it in terms of some tree, and it is easier to find the distance. So what it does is, uh, that is the only good part which I like about KNN, and that actually happens with a lot of clustering algorithms as well. So basically what it does, it will dwell the distance in terms of trees. So if this is 0.1, 2, this could be 0.5, this could be 0.4, and then 3 is even farther, 6 is even farther, right? So basically it develops a tree, and because of distance parameter, and we know like this could be lesser, so this could be some lesser to some value of 1, and this could be greater to some value of 1. It is the distance parameter I'm talking about. So based on that, based on few criteria, we can develop a KD tree where we can move very fast into almost in log n time if we wanted to. Log 2 of n. Okay, so we can basically search the minimal points very easily. So which are the minimalist points here? Can you tell me? If I were to choose just 3 minimal points, how would you know which are the 3 minimal points? Imagine whenever you go left, that is smaller, and whenever you go right, it is bigger. So if this is a point 0 or base 0 point, then can you tell me the 3 nearest points based on distance?
5, 3, 6.
Sorry, what?
5, 3, and 6.
4 will also come in that same game, right? And 3 will also come in the same game. 6 is greater than 4. So first 3 would be what? So first the leftmost, whatever the leftmost point is, of course 5. And then 4, of course, because 4 is definitely greater than 5. And 3 is lesser than 4. So 3 has to be selected, no doubt. 6 is greater than 4. So it's not a guarantee that it will not be bigger than 5 or 4. Okay, so it can be very big. So first 3 points, depending on how do you surveil or how do you travel, would be like this. Okay, so let's say these are the points and this is the distance. So it will be 5, 4, 3. Okay, because one is of course greater than this whole branch. One or two are going to be bigger than this branch itself. Okay.
Sir, I totally missed this. I didn't understand. What
Okay,
was
sorry.
the
Okay,
idea
sorry,
here?
sorry. My bad. Because I'm again making an assumption, unfortunately here. Uh, okay, is the tree traversal problem? Okay, I'm not sure how many people understand this properly. So you understand when you make a search tree, what happens really? So, okay, what happens in a binary search tree if I were to ask you? BST, binary search tree.
We go through yes, no based on some condition.
Yeah, yes, no, some kind of condition, you are right. So basically, based on certain condition, you can also think like if you were to arrange an array sequentially in increasing or decreasing order somehow. Basically, what you would get here is, let's say there is a middle point. You decide 10 is the middle point. So anything less than 10 will go this direction. Anything greater than 10 will go in this direction. So based on your leaves or based on your classification, and remember, left is lower and right is the higher one. Now there is a traveling order which is called LNR, which is LNR means first you select the leaf, not leaf, sorry, my bad, left node, and then the right one. Idea is node is gonna be in middle of left and right. This is why it is called LNR. So this is one way of traversal where first we choose the left, then we choose the node, and then we choose the right one. Okay, this is how usually it works. So based on LNR, I chose 5, 3 and 5, 4 and 3. Okay, make sense? So this is a tree traversal idea. Whenever you have arranged or some kind of a ordering in the tree, you have a way of traveling over there and you can figure it out. Okay. So again, even if in this scenario, again, I were to ask you three smallest points would be what? So first you will, let's say the threshold is at 10. So these points are going to be less than 10 and these points are going to be, this side points are going to be greater than 10. Make sense? So how will you travel? L and R. So first the left one, leftmost is going to be the most smallest, then the node one, and then the right one. Make sense?
So it will depend upon the question, am I right? If it says greater than 10, then it will be R and I'll choose go to right first anyway.
No, it will go left first, right?
Now, what I'm saying is if
Oh, greater than, sorry, no. So I was asking three minimalist or shortest distance points. So you will go in the left direction first to check those out.
okay.
Because again, remember, we were actually discussing in reference of K nearest neighbor, K and N, right? So nearest, so whenever we say nearest, we mean minimal, right? So minimal, I guess you understand now that we are talking about the minimal point. So of course I will go towards the left side. Agree?
Okay.
Basically, these are the distances, right? The numbers in BST.
KD tree has been developed, let's say, based on distances, some distance parameter that it decides, and it arranges so that the complexity of the algorithm, because if you were to calculate the complexity, distance at every point, it will be of n squared immediately. So KD tree or ball tree will actually reduce the overall complexity and it will bring it to n log n actually. Okay, fine.
Sir, one point before we move. So you said on top that it has to be prime, otherwise it will divide. What it meant that default is equal to 5 or some prime number. Why was the prime number?
Okay, so look, although there is a random walk programmed in anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But what will happen is, let's say I choose 9, okay? 9 is not a prime number. So, and there are 3 classes. So what is the problem I can run into very easily? If I choose nine nearest neighbors, what is the problem if I have 3 classifications? Then what is the one problem then I can very easily run into?
There are 3 points from every class. So what to decide about the
How would you
9?
get the max value over there? So rather you choose 7 or 11, means nearest ones. So the hope is ideally equal split is just not possible after a while. Again, remember, even if it gets equal split, it doesn't break because there is a random walk programmed in. It will just choose something randomly. It doesn't really matter. But ideally, to avoid that, we stick with the idea of prime numbers, because what is the property of prime number?
It cannot be divided.
Sorry?
It cannot be divided by anything other than 1 or itself.
Or itself. Okay. So unless, yeah, so basically that's it. So unless you have exactly 11 classes, so then make sure you don't choose 11, maybe then choose 13 or maybe choose 17. Okay. But just keep choosing some prime numbers ideally. And in Python, and there are some ways to generate prime numbers really fast. So you can just choose some first 10 prime numbers and maybe even experiment with all the prime numbers as. So maybe start with 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, right? So again, even I tend to forget, but
Yeah, but got the idea. Got the idea.
the idea is I don't want this equal separations problem, because if it were to choose randomly again and again, it can
Yeah.
equally get it wrong as well.
Get it. Yeah.
Makes sense, because again, it has not really drawn a decision boundary to figure something out. It's
Yeah,
just
right.
literally getting a KD tree, and based on KD tree, it is trying to do this classification. But it is very easily possible that it gets three in the same case. Like if I choose 9k nearest neighbors, it will get 333 for all three classes. Then you are like, okay, I will choose randomly, and choosing randomly is tricky, right? You can go wrong as well.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
So
Thanks.
that is why a simple session is just to choose a prime number as your k value. So by default, it is 5 anyways. You can increase or decrease, but do not like go to 1 or 2. Make it like 3 and higher. Always think like that. Okay, I will go 3 or higher here. Okay. All right. So again, remember, I am telling you again and again, it's a classification. It's not even a clustering method. Okay. It's directly a classifier, because based on your values, it is just going to calculate distance and simply going to work it out. Okay. That's it. I don't consider it is not even put in clusters, it is put in neighbors. So there are some neighbors algorithms, although we are not going to go deep with these things now. But just to tell you that what happens basically, and there is a very simple idea of k nearest, k neighbor classifiers. And that's basically, I just wanted you to know that there is a very simple algorithm for doing these things as well. But I don't really consider it as a learning algorithm. Okay, and you have just seen there is no really learning happening actually. Okay, guys, so what we will do is in the next class, we are gonna go through hierarchical learning, and maybe also I will just in running show you bit of ideas of DBSCAN as well. DBSCAN is a density based. So to kind of navigate or kind of run away from the problem of this idea that we need the K clusters well in advance, we will not do that, and we will take a shopping data, and over there in that CSV file, I will show you how to work with it and how to classify your shopping data and how many clusters. And that will be based on certain threshold that we like to set. And we will also look into another example of a DBSCAN, which is a density based scanning, which basically requires certain amount of points to be present in area. Otherwise, they will not even be considered as clusters. So we will see this in the next class, hopefully on Monday itself. And in meanwhile, okay, how many people were able to get results? Like I told you to do cross validation with your previous task already, right? So how many people were able to get those results? What kind of results and which model do you think worked very well in your use case?
I've not completed, but I've kind of started with it, but kind of not
So do one thing.
reached to the results.
No problem, no rush. You guys can start working on that, or if you have not already. If you have worked on it, give me some screenshots or send it to the email I have provided. And let me see what kind of results you guys are getting right now. Okay, so we can determine that people are running it correctly or not. And yeah, I would like to see your code and I would like to see your results. So you can just send it over there. So you guys have my email? If
Yes.
not, I will give you once again. Just don't. Okay. So if someone has already finished the code, they can send me the file. If you are doing it on Colab, just share me the link with this on this email ID, it would be easier for me to just check and verify. So just make sure that you do that experiment. Believe me, that will kind of give you a very good interface how things might be working and how to classify all. And let me share this link as well right now so that you guys can at least go through it. I will paste this link in your Google Classrooms as well. Sorry, not this one. Copy link. So Shweta, basically you have to take this breast cancer data set. You had to perform all the major like 4, 5, and now you also know KNN as well. So you had to perform classifications based on these algorithms, and then you had to apply cross validation. So yesterday it was actually covered. So if you have not watched the yesterday's class, I would really ask you to go ahead and watch the video which has been posted already. So go ahead and just watch that, and hopefully it will be much clearer after that. So basically what I want you to do is I want you to run cross validation and see those results first, because it is just not good enough to get a single accuracy score. You have to run cross validation, and then you will see the variability in your accuracy or precision or recall. And then you have to choose the best model. According to model will be chosen which is more consistent. Okay. You also have to worry about overfitting. So you should see the difference between training score and the testing score. Okay. If there is too much of difference, like 10%, 20% points, then basically you have to reject that model, because clearly the model is overfitting. So I told about few steps yesterday. So if you could just watch the video first of all, that would be helpful. Okay, all right, guys. So let me wrap up the session for